Hello, everybody. This is K Green 829, and welcome to another edition of the AAC Wrap Up Show. This is week 7, and I'm recording this at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time right now. So recruiting isn't done. So but I really wanted to record, the first part and the results and everything. And then I'll pause the recording, and then I'll start recording, recruiting when that comes out, and then this will be posted probably on Sunday. So let's get into the results. First up, we had a game against East Carolina and UCF. So this game was a game that I was excited to watch going into this because UCF I had as the number one team, number one or number two, I can't remember right now, in the conference. And ECU is a team that's really started to put things together. 3-0. They're to this point, they're 2-0, I believe, in conference play. I don't have it pulled up, but they were 2-0 in conference play. Uh, Either way, they were undefeated, is what I remember. And this team is a team that's really started to heat up since going to conference play. This became a really big game in terms of standings in the AAC. And East Carolina puts on a dominant performance, completely blanking UCF with a 24-0 win. Stephen Rivero, the quarterback of ECU, absolutely beautiful. 146 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions in the air. And then on the ground, 25 attempts for 178 yards and another touchdown. You add that all together, and that is 322 all-purpose yards and 3 total touchdowns. Um, just an outstanding game by Rivero. I mean, this is just a quarterback that's really putting it together. But again, in this game, it's kind of like a throwback game. I mean, 146 passing yards for ECU, 153 for UCF, but the majority of the production for both teams came on the ground. Like I said, Rivero, 178 rushing yards. Then ECU's starting running back, Ryan Gobert, 87 rushing yards. UCF starting running back, Stephen Herder, 25 attempts for 100 rushing yards. So you see that's over 300 yards rushing the ball. It's Stephen Herder, who has been playing great, had 2 fumbles. So not the best game for him. Didn't score any touchdowns, but a real throwback where you saw both teams really get a lot of their offense and a lot of their yards on the ground. Um, Ryan Gobert, again, he's been playing great and he continues to play great while only being the second leading rusher on ECU behind the beautiful performance by Rivero. Gobert had 18 attempts for 87 yards and no touchdowns on the ground, but through the air was targeted 8 times, making 6 catches for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just again, another great performance by Ryan Gilbert. Denzel Green also had a good performance, 7 targets, 4 catches for 68 yards. ECU just looks like a really good team. And UCF, they couldn't do anything. East Carolina's defense was just stopping them because they threw 2 interceptions and they fumbled the ball twice. This was a very dominant performance by ECU's offense, but even more so by the defense, with cornerback Carson McClure getting 4 solo tackles, interception, and fumble recovery. Outside linebacker Nick Bonilla getting a forced fumble. Cornerback Josh Robinson forcing a fumble. And cornerback Danny Garcia with an interception. It was just a beautiful game all around by this defense. And I mean, there's not much else to say about this game. UCF just wasn't up to the task in this game, and ECU played lights out. I think this is more of a case of ECU putting on an impressive game than UCF, but UCF definitely showed some holes, and they're going to have some stuff they have to work on. Next up, we have Temple at Houston, and he's been getting a lot of media attention recently. Backup quarterback turned running back, Devontae Doyle, and in this game he showed out. 312 all-purpose yards and 4 combined touchdowns. He went 34 attempts for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, and then through the air went a perfect 6 for 6, 25 yards, and another touchdown. You want to talk about dominant performances? I mean, after this week, Devontae Doyle has his picture in the book. Sorry, that's my bad. He has his picture under the definition for dominant performance. He was just everywhere. To think that this guy was a quarterback is just insane. He wasn't getting the playing time. He was one of the more athletic players in the league, and clearly moving him to running back was the right choice because he has thrived there. He has. Um, Sorry, I didn't even talk about the results of this game. Um, on the backs of that great performance by Devontae Doyle, Houston recaptures the magic, beating Temple into the ground with a final score of 40-7. This game included an amazing 26 points by Houston in the fourth quarter alone. That's where they went into the fourth quarter leading 14-0, and in the fourth quarter they turned up the heat. They allowed a touchdown but put 26 points on the board. Again, just an amazing performance. Trevor Cawthorn, 23 completions, 32 attempts for 212 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you look at the receivers, and there was not one guy who was making the plays. Like I said, Devontae Doyle had 25 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Robin Schaefer, 38 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Michael Kirksey, 61 yards and a touchdown. Running back Moses Walker, 43 yards. Wide receiver Jacob Virgin, 38 yards. And you look at that, and there's no clear receiver number one. The production for receiving was spread out evenly through all these receivers, which was amazing because I mean, with this many targets going around and everybody producing like this, you can't cover that. I mean, if it's after one person, I mean, you can scheme against it, but if the whole team is making plays on the receiving end, you cannot cover them. And Houston just looked deadly through the air, and especially on the ground with Devontae Doyle having the game of a lifetime. I mean, borderline best game by a running back we've seen. Probably not true, but I'm just going to say this is a very impressive game without even taking into consideration that this is a quarterback who did that. Beautiful game. I recommend looking at the box score. There's a lot of things that will surprise you. Um, only one fumble, only one turnover. That was a fumble by running back Moses Walker. Defenses in this game, I mean, for the most part, did really good. Temple's inside linebacker Daniel Calhoun, an impressive 13 tackles and 4 TFLs. But nothing really stood out too much on the defense. These defenses held the offense on at each other's offense at bay until the fourth quarter. Houston's defense didn't have any standout guys doing anything, but I mean they were just solid throughout the game to hold Temple to 7 points. So huge one for Houston. This is their second win. They're now 2-4. Temple is going to go down and drop to 3-3. And Houston, like I say, Houston is looking good. I had Temple as my fourth. They've had trouble winning, but when they do get their wins, they get wins against big time opponents. Temple I had as the fourth best team in the AAC, and they took them down. And their other win comes against TAMU, who's at the time ranked number 6, which again, 2 huge wins. And while they only have the 2, both of them being big wins like this, if they can string together a couple more wins, they can I can still call this season a success. Anytime you can go, I'm pretty sure it was a home game for TAMU, so anytime you can go into a ranked game and you're going into it away as an unranked team with no wins and you come away with the win, that's a huge game and that's a huge that's a season you can be proud of just because of that. Houston really turned things around, and like I've been saying, this is a talented team who's just trying to figure things out. They got their second win under their belt here, and a lot of things went right for them. So I think they're going to start building on this. I think we're going to see a lot more production from Houston. They're one of my favorite teams to talk about in the AAC just because they have they I'll get to my other favorite team, but they have so much talent, and you see the talent bleed through at times. And this was a night where you saw the talent bleed through, and I'm hoping that that they can keep this going. That's the end of our Thursday games. So if you let's move on to our Friday games, and our first game on Friday was was Memphis at SMU. So this is one of the uh these are two teams in the AAC that haven't been doing much good. SMU's 1-5, Memphis is 0-5. SMU's one win comes against Navy, who hasn't won a game in the conference. So you know, this is not one of the more exciting games, but uh, you were not able to tell those teams that. They turned this into a pretty exciting game with Memphis barely edging out SMU with a final score of 34-27. SMU's quarterback Tyler Graham, uh, I mean, he threw the ball 71 times this week, and only completed 47 of those passes, which is still pretty impressive. 413 yards and 2 touchdowns. The only problem is he threw 4 interceptions. And that kind of leads me to the difference maker in this game. The difference maker was the defense, because Memphis quarterback Brian Holsey, 19 completions, 35 attempts, 323 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That's 6 interceptions. We haven't even gotten into fumbles. And you look at that, there's one there's 2 fumbles in this game, so that's a total of 8 turnovers in this game, which is just a huge number. Neither team was able to get much on the ground game, but they were able to produce through the air. SMU had 2 wide receivers getting the majority of their yards, with Tony Sikoro going 25 for 16 for 101 yards and a touchdown. Adam Hanso, wide receiver Adam Hanso, going 14 for 12 for 129 yards and a touchdown. And Jake Greenberg, who had a very bad day at wide receiver, still was able to do good. He got 83 yards, and you might be wondering why that's bad. Well, he fumbled it once, and he was targeted 14 times, but he only made 5 catches. If Greenberg can start, making those catches, then that's like that. We can start seeing a lot more production from him. Uh, Oops, sorry. I just checked my phone. I got a notification. That's the Dolphins game over. But back to this. Memphis also had some production with their wide receivers. Stephen Collins, wide receiver, 9 for 5, 133 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Just a great performance by Collins. And wide receiver Ryan Forbes, 7 for 5, 117 yards. Now, like I said, the difference maker in this game was the defense. And you look at some of these defensive performances, and you scroll down first and you see Raymond Fry, free safety, 8 tackles, 8 solo tackles, 2 interceptions, which is insane. Then you scroll down a little bit more to Memphis. Brad Jones, cornerback, 5 solo tackles, 3 interceptions. If Don't quote me on this because I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't think I've seen somebody like an individual person get 3 interceptions. I think that might be the SimCFB record for interceptions in a game. Again, don't quote me on that. I'll have to look into it a little bit more, but just a great performance by Brad Jones. And Memphis comes away. They squeak away with their first win of the season. And Memphis kicker Brian Holsey. I mean, who needs a kicker? Brian Holsey, 4 for 4 on extra points and 2 for 2 on field goals. I mean, again, is a problem with quarterbacks starting at kickers, but maybe it's not that big of a problem as we see Brian Holsey, have a good game, and we will get to kicking performance in a little bit because there's a team I want to talk about kickers for. Um, but we'll get there. Next up, we have our next game, which was Navy at USF. 2-4 USF versus 0-4 Navy, and Navy continues to struggle. They lose 24-7. And then another game where Neither team could get much of the air. USF's quarterback Kyle Higbee, 14 for 20, 149 yards and an interception. Navy's quarterback Benny Ramirez, 18 for 26, 171 yards and a touchdown. A much better game by Benny Ramirez, but still not great. USF running back, I've been talking about him every week. He's absolutely insane, and he put on a show, and he's the reason USF won this game. Kevin Recker, running back, 17 attempts, 162 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Without Recker, this probably would have been a win for Navy, since he scored every single one of the touchdowns for USF. Huge game for him. And you look through, nobody else really had a great performance. I mean, you can look at Wes Asuna, wide receiver, 7 for 5, 89 yards. And then Tavion West, the running back, 2 for 2 for 7 yards, getting the lone touchdown for Navy. So that was big. And then you move over to the defense, and Navy cornerback Hector Roberts with 1 tackle and the 1 interception. I will say, impressive game by inside linebacker Mario Vendetti for USF with 13 solo tackles. And USF's kicker, I talked about how I don't know, actually, I might have skipped over it. They got a field goal, but they missed a field goal. The kicker went 1 for 2. And without the huge game by Recker, those field goals would have been, big different. They would have been huge for this game, because if Recker hadn't stepped up and gotten those 3 touchdowns, if he goes half on the field goals, or just like or is not great on his field goal production, then USF loses that game and Navy gets their first win. Moving on, we have the one, because there is 11 teams, we have our one out of conference game of the season, and it's a rematch. Last year, Cincinnati got a big win against Bowling Green. Pretty sure that was in Cincinnati. This year, they go to Ohio to face Bowling Green, and Bowling Green gets their revenge. They absolutely destroy Cincinnati, 37-6. Dexter Reed, the quarterback for Bowling Green, had a beautiful game. Bit of a problem with interceptions. He went 41 for 56 completions, 41 completions on 56 attempts, 436 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But that being said, threw 3 interceptions, which needs to work on. But the rest of the game for Reed was really good. And then the running back, Frank Robinson, 22 attempts for 124 yards and a touchdown. And then wide receiver for Bowling Green, Jordan Suter, also balled out, 16 targets, 14 catches for 158 yards and a touchdown. And Frank Robinson, like I pointed out, another, he's not a running back. 22 attempts for 124 yards and a touchdown. He's not a running back. He's another one of those quarterbacks turned running back. And he also was another huge producer. You're seeing this all across the league. These backup scrambling quarterbacks are moved to running back, and they are just they've just been having dominant performances for their teams. And this is no difference. Like I said, the big game on the ground, but also through the air. Frank Robinson, the quarterback, 8 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Nick Fields on 9 targets, 7 catches, and 73 yards, got a fumble, which raises the Bowling Green's turnovers to 4. Cincinnati did not turn the ball over at all. And all of the turnovers for Cincinnati were spread out. They were caused by different people. So, it's a game that was really tough. Cincinnati's been a team that's been struggling. Like I said, ever since conference play began, they were undefeated, and then once they hit conference play, they've lost every single game. This is not a conference game, but I'm marking the time, not like the teams. Rudy Howell, the kicker for Bowling Green, missed an extra point, but no big news there. Moving on to our last game of the week, we have Tulsa. We have number 20 Tulane at Tulsa, and Final score, Tulane wins 28-17. And I wrote my Locked in Tulane article, and I said it in there, and I'm going to say it in here. This game, well, Tulane won by 2 touchdowns. They won by, sorry, they won, well, Tulane won by 11 points. Sorry, hold up. My bad. Safeties don't get recorded on the box score. So I forgot about this. Tulane got a safety in the first quarter, which wasn't recorded on the box score. So the final score was Tulane 30, Tulsa 17. Tulane winning by 13 points, nearly 2 touchdowns. But it was a very close game. But before we get into that, let's go over some stats. Bronson Morrow, 27 for 53, 512 yards and 3 touchdowns. Couldn't get the performance on the ground like they tried to, but Fernando Thomas, 19 for 13, 251 yards and 2 touchdowns. Travian Love, wide receiver, 14 targets, 8 receptions for 153 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Pena, wide receiver, the third wide receiver, 6 targets, 2 catches, 83 yards. Like I said, this was a very close game. Going into the fourth quarter, Tulsa was actually up on Tulane, 17-16. This was a very close game, and in the fourth quarter, Tulane was just able to run away with it, scoring a touchdown in the middle of the game to put them, scoring a touchdown in the middle of the fourth to put them up by 6, and then the nail in the coffin touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left, putting them up 30-17. Some other news from this game that I want to point out real quick. Defensive tackle, Tyler Ryder, 2 solo tackles, half a TFL, half a sack, and his first, keep in mind this is a senior, his first career interception. This was a huge moment for Reader and the rest of the team. Reader, like I said on my Locked in on Tulane, 6'3", 295 pounds. When he got the interception, he ran it back 6 yards from the line of scrimmage, and he fell to the ground, and the entire Tulane team rushed the field and carried this monster of a man off the field. It was a sight to see. It was just crazy to see. And the last thing I want to point out is the bane of my existence, my kicker, Adam Edwards. I absolutely despise this guy. I have a burning hatred for him. It's something that I just couldn't explain, before the game started. I didn't really have a reason for it. I just, for some reason, didn't like this guy. And he's given me a reason by missing field goals and extra points all season. And he really pissed me off this week. He went 4 for 4 in extra points, but it was like he had something to prove. He went 0 for 5 on field goals. His long, and 2 of the field goals he missed. One was from 30 yards. One was from 32 yards. I forget one of them, and the other 2 were from like 43 and 45 yards out. Not too far field goals, but he went 0 for 5. Just a terrible performance by this guy, who I am 100% not a fan of, and I want this guy off my team immediately. All right, now let's get into the AAC rankings. So where do we stand? Before we go into the rankings, I want to just talk about where we stand. Last week, I had my ranking laid out, and number 2, number 3, and number 4 of my AAC rankings all lost. So that puts us in a spot where we have some teams who could possibly move up. So let's count it down from 3. Third place, we have UCF. They fell. I'm pretty sure I had them at 1. They were either 1 or 2. They were the best team. They were the best of the 3. They might have been number 2. I'm not sure, but out of them, Cincinnati and Temple, who were my top teams who lost, they're the best team. I didn't feel like any other teams deserve to jump up ahead of them, so they stay at number 3. Next up, we have making the top three for the first time in this season. East Carolina coming off against their huge win against former number 2 or 1 UCF. I can't remember. An absolutely dominant performance. They are, I mean, other than Tulane, they are the only team that is undefeated in conference play. So they definitely deserved a spot in here as my number 2 team. And just gave it away. Number 1, we have Tulane, previously ranked 20, beating Tulsa, and with a couple of losses from other ranked teams, has a real shot to move up a lot in the polls. But let's get into the rankings. I have Tulane at 1 with 5-1. They're 5-1 overall, 3-0 in conference play. East Carolina 4-2, 3-0 in conference play. UCF and Temple are both 2-1 in conference play, but 4-2 and 3-3 overall, respectively. Then Cincinnati drops. USF gets their win, so they move up to 5, 3-4, 3-1 in the conference. Cincinnati drops all the way from 3. I think I had them at. They were either 3 or 4 to 6. They're now 3-4. Have not won a game since the start of conference play. Houston, with a huge win, jumps up to 7th, 2-4, 1-2 in conference play. Then Tulsa and Memphis, both 1-5, 1-2 in conference play. SMU at 1-6, 1-3 in conference play. And rounding at the bottom, we have Navy 0-5, and they're 0-2 in conference play. Now let's get into the discussion. I actually didn't have it pulled up, so let me pull it up right now. It's loading. So we are going into week 8, and we've got 3 bye weeks. USF, SMU, and Tulane all have the week off. Just at week 7, that's the midway week. Sorry, that's the midway point of the season, and right after the midway point, we see 3 AAC teams getting a break, getting the week off. So, gonna be big weeks for them. They're gonna have a lot of time to go over their next opponents. But let's get into the games that actually are going to be played. So first off, we have Temple at UCF. Temple had a big loss, but they're number 4 in my rankings. UCF is number 3. This is going to be a game to watch because whoever wins this game, might be able to leapfrog number 2, depending on what happens to my AAC rankings. It's all gonna have to see, but that's gonna be a big game. It's at UCF. Going into my predictions, I think Temple might actually be able to pull off the road win. I know road wins have been hard to come by, but I think Temple may have it in them. UCF, they're coming off their first loss, they're coming off their second loss, first loss in conference. And I don't know. I just call it a gut feeling. I feel like Temple has it with them. Temple is a team that has looked really good, and a tough loss against Houston. I feel like they're going to bounce back. I feel like we'll see them get the win. Next up, we have East Carolina at Cincinnati. Cincinnati 0-4 since conference play began, and East Carolina has gotten hot as they are 3-0 since conference play began. It's 2 completely different teams. They started the season off 0-3, then proceeded to win 3 straight to get to 3-3. And then you look at Cincinnati. They started the season off 3-0, and then lost 4 straight to get to 3-4. I mean, you look at teams; these teams cannot get any more different. It's going to be a very interesting game to watch. I predict an East Carolina win. They will stay unbeaten in the AAC. And looking at it, after this, they only have 3 more in-conference games left, which could mean that we could very well see them make the AAC Conference Championship game. Just having to play Temple, SMU, and Tulsa. SMU and Tulsa have not been having the greatest season. So the only real test as of now, and the rest of their schedule after Cincinnati is Temple. So if they get the win against Cincinnati, they are pretty much a shoo-in for the conference championship game. Um, Next up, we have Tulsa at Navy. This is going to be another good game to watch. Tulsa's 1-5, Navy's 0-4. Two teams that have been struggling. One of them is going to have to win this game. And, I mean, a win can be big for both teams. Navy getting their first win, Tulsa getting their second win. You can see either one of those as the kick in the pants that they need to get back on track, and start to turn their season around. So, I have trouble predicting this game, but I expect Tulsa to win. They're coming off mad against Tulane. They had a very close game that they could have won. I feel like they will come away with a win, despite being away, but I can see that going either way. Then we have Houston at Memphis. Memphis is another team that's been struggling, and Houston, Memphis, both teams that have been struggling. We've been seeing them have trouble producing. Houston coming off against another big win. They're going up against Memphis. I feel like everything. Here's the thought process with this. Right now, it looks like Houston can only win big games. Memphis is not a big game. With that being said, Houston has the talent. They've got 2 wins under their belt. I feel 100% confident in saying Houston has this game locked in. Okay, I feel like Houston's going to go into Memphis and come away with a win. Um, and that's going to be huge for them, and huge for their season, huge going forward. Um, Last thing I want to do, I want to discuss Tulane, because I mentioned East Carolina for the conference championship game. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be Tulane and East Carolina for the conference championship game. So let's look at the schedule ahead for Tulane. They got their bye week next week in week 8, and then they come back against UCF, who's been sliding. They can if they can get a and I want to preface this. Tulane had a very easy start to their in-conference schedule. The three in-conference teams they played were Memphis, Navy, and Tulsa. All three teams are near the bottom. So they get the week off, and then they have to fight to get someone. UCF, very talented team, is going to be tough. Houston, another very talented team. They've had trouble putting together, but with their second win, they could get a win next week at Memphis. We could be looking at a 3-win team Houston that is, um, I mean, and then going up against Cincinnati. They might lose, they might win, but 3 or 4 team Houston that's really starting to put their season together. They're hungry for a win. They're, they've got the talent that can be a very scary game for Tulane. Then we have Temple, another team that's been doing pretty good, and then South Florida. And then after that, they play at Cincinnati. So the only away games that they have, in conference for the rest of this is at Houston and at Cincinnati, which I feel like are going to be very dangerous games. Um, so Tulane, I feel like East Carolina has a much better shot at making the conference championship than Tulane, just because compared to Tulane, East Carolina's remaining in conference games is a lot easier. I forgot to mention East Carolina also has to play Memphis for their last in conference game, but again, not a big team that they should have to worry about. So I feel like East Carolina is almost a guaranteed lock for the conference championship game. Well, I feel like Tulane is the better team than East Carolina. Um, I mean, they've been beating up on the lower ranked teams in the AAC. They're going to have a real tough time against these next couple of AAC games, and I would not be surprised. Honestly, I think they can do it, but I wouldn't be too shocked or surprised to see them drop 1 or 2 of those games and be out of the running with the AAC championship. Sorry about that, guys. So pretty much, I recorded this whole segment, and then it turns out my mic wasn't picking up anything. So I'm going to go back through it. My first attempt of this was at 12:58, right after the recruiting sync, and I got everything together. But now it is 1:10 in the morning. It is the next day, and I'm going to try and get through this relatively quickly, and then I will try and fail to fall asleep. So let's get into recruiting. We've got some new AAC members that we have to announce. We're going to be starting off with 3 schools who get their first recruit. Then we're going to move on to something else that I'm not going to spoil yet. Then we're going to get to the overall recruiting rankings, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, first up, we have the highest ranked recruit to commit to an AAC school, and that is ranked 49 running back out of North Carolina, Apex, North Carolina, from Apex Friendship High School. Probably is benefiting from that close to home affinity. It's 5'9", 192 pounds, 4-star receiving running back George Lemons, who commits to East Carolina University. B overall, B potential, receiving archetype. And I really like the receiving archetype running backs because those guys really turn into like gadget guys. You can play them at running back, you can play them at receiver. No matter like what you have in your offense, receiving backs are somebody that you can always get production from. You can always fit in your offense. It's just an archetype that I really like. I'm a big fan of. And for East Carolina to get such a good running back with that archetype is a huge win for them. They were completely uncontested here with 100% odds, which I think, this is a guy that flew under the radar. I didn't see this guy, and if I saw this guy and if I noticed this guy earlier, I definitely probably would have tried to get on this guy because, like I said, this is a guy I really like. I feel like there were a couple teams that saw it. I feel like maybe ECU was a little aggressive out at the gate and scared a couple teams off, but regardless of how they did it, this is a great win by East Carolina University. And that's their first recruit, so huge first recruit to get. Next up, we get to another first recruit, and that's an outside linebacker out of LaPorte, Texas, from LaPorte High School. Archetype is speed, and I actually had a conversation with the coach that did get the commitment. And he likes the speed archetype, and it's a rare archetype. You don't see it too often. And in a outside linebacker class that is, a little bit thinner than last year, at least in my opinion, to get a 4-star outside linebacker with this much talent is a huge get. That's going to be University of Houston bringing in the 55th ranked recruit, outside linebacker Terrell Bernard, 4-star guy, B overall, B plus potential. So somebody that is going to make a big impact. He's got the size of a linebacker too. It's 6'1", 222 pounds. This is a guy that, will make a big impact for this Houston program. They came off with a big win. Like I said earlier in the show, they came away with a big win. They got a lot of talent. They look like a good team. And this is somebody that's really going to help them out. This was also a battle. I think this is the only one. This is the only person who committed to an AAC school this week that we're going to talk about, which is every person that committed to an AAC school. But it's the only person that committed to an AAC school that actually had a recruiting battle. Everything was 100% odds, except for this one. That's University of Houston, edging out Ball State. 59% odds for Houston, 41 for Ball State. Houston pulls away with it. A little bit of close to home affinity, helping Houston with this. That may have been the difference maker because this is a slim margin of how much these teams are separated by. Really close battle. Huge for Houston to pull it off, get their first recruit. I really like this for Houston. It's a great guy. It's a guy that's going to get better with time with that B plus potential. Could be a real leader on that defense. Next up, we have another school getting their first recruit, and this is a scrambling quarterback. Scrambling quarterbacks have been very interesting in the sim recently because we've seen a movement of them not really playing quarterback, but instead playing running back, and thriving in that running back position. Whether you want to look at Houston with Devontae Doyle, just any other. There's a lot of teams that are running this. They have their quarterbacks running back, and it works for them. So I don't know how this scrambling quarterback is going to be used. Whether they're going to keep him at quarterback or use his athleticism and play him as like a running back receiver. Only time will tell. But that's scrambling quarterback, 4-star Caesar Chacon. He is the 111th ranked recruit out of Muskogee, Oklahoma. It's a Hilldale High School and benefits from a close to home affinity for Tulsa. 100% odds to go to Tulsa. C overall, B plus potential, and he's 6'1", 210 pounds. So nice, nice quarterback. This is a really nice quarterback. Not sure if he has the arm or the accuracy to play quarterback in this league, but the dude's athleticism is unmatched. He's really athletic quarterback, and he's somebody that, he's somebody that can get really good. And again, no matter where he's played, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, he's somebody that will be able to make an impact for Tulsa. So first recruit, that's a huge grab for them. I'm a big fan of this. Next up, we have a team that's been hot on the recruiting trail, and they've only gotten hotter. They are, they're a top 5 team on the recruiting rankings, and they're a top 5 team in my personal recruiting rankings, which I'm not going to share because I'm not as informed about the rest of the league. But based off of the top teams that I know, I have them in the top 5. It's a free safety, zone coverage free safety out of Frisco, Texas, from Frisco High School. I know this one benefited from the Service Academy, if any. That's free safety Bernard Wilson committing to Navy. 130th ranked recruit chooses to serve in the Navy if he does not get drafted into the NFL. But I think that is something that is not likely. B overall, C plus potential. This is a guy that can play. He's 5'11", 192 pounds, a little bit undersized in my opinion. But Navy getting the 100% commitment from a guy from Texas. Texas guys, they live, breathe, and die football. So, whenever you get a guy from Texas, there's certain states, Texas, Florida, a couple others, but especially, with like Texas, you get a guy from Texas, he's going to play well for you, and he's going to pour his heart out. So even if he doesn't see the field, this is a guy that's going to be great to have in that, on that team. He's going to be somebody that's hyping everyone up. I think this is a free safety that will really start to pull things together for Navy. They've got a decent secondary, if I remember correctly, but I think they have some guys graduating. So this is really going to help, and who knows, maybe I know their safeties are really good. Maybe he can be moved over to cornerback and help there, because I know their cornerback room isn't as strong. Moving on, you get to see him again. Like I said, hot on the recruiting trail. Navy picks up another commitment. This time it's defensive end Michael Harris, the 163rd ranked recruit in the class. Balanced archetype, 4 stars. C overall, B plus potential, 6'5", 271. This guy is an absolute monster. He's huge. So even if he can't play, which spoiler alert, he fucking can. This is the guy that's can make a big defense, that can make a big impact, and he's somebody that offensive linemen should learn to fear. Just on the size alone, 6'5", 271. I just have to reiterate that. It's a guy from Connecticut, Oakdale, Connecticut, which is not really a big football place, but the senior from St. Thomas More has a lot of potential. I think he's got the skill. Well, that will be that remains to be seen. But he 100% has the body to be an all-star defensive end. 100% odds to commit to Navy. Navy gets a huge commitment here in their 4th recruiting commit. Team that's really hot. They've struggled on the field, but it's been a completely different story on the recruiting trail. One of only 3 teams with 4 commitments already. Next up, we have that unnamed segment that I'm getting to, and it's a little bit of a sad one. This is the one that got away. Pocket quarterback out of Atlanta, Georgia, from Westlake High School, Willie Robinson, commits to Western Michigan University. Great program over there. C overall, B plus potential, 4-star guy, 6'3", 216. Really looks like he can be a great quarterback, and he commits to Western Michigan University with 60% odds. The only reason I'm talking about him on this show is because we had one of our own in on this battle, and that was Temple with 40% odds. He couldn't swing it, and he walked over to Western Michigan. It's a big loss for Temple, but there's nothing you can do about it at this point. Advice for them is there's a lot of other great quarterbacks in this pool, and there's a lot of guys that they can pivot onto. They got to have a short memory and quickly pivot away from Robinson, and go grab another quarterback if they want one, because who knows how much longer they're going to be remaining here. They're a little bit behind, so they got to be willing to throw a lot of points on quarterbacks that they want, but you know, uh, just you got to be ready. You got to go after another quarterback starting next week. Now let's get to our recruiting rankings, and we're just going to skip to only the good schools. By good schools, I mean AAC schools, because no school that's not in the AAC is good, and all the AAC teams are the best teams in the league. If you look at the standings, you'll see 1 through 11 is all AAC teams. Don't actually check that because you can take my word. First up, we have at the number 4 spot Navy. Navy, they have 4 recruits. They've got a composite score of 5.99, 349 ESPN score, 128 rivals, and 88.76 24/7 score. Navy has been a really good team recruiting wise, and they're really flexing their stuff. Coach Syndicate, he's got some stuff he's got to work out in terms of game planning, but he has got recruiting down to a T. Next up, we have Tulane at 15. They have 2 recruits. They weren't able to swing any this week, and they didn't lose out on any battles, but there were a couple guys on their board that they missed out on, like wide receiver Victor Vigil and wide receiver, let me pull it up. Just had it, sorry. Wide receiver Victor Vigil and wide receiver Dennis Davis were the 2 biggest guys that they were looking at that got poached. They didn't actually go after them. They didn't make any kind of push, but they were guys that I was keeping an eye on. Huge gets for the schools that got them, which is Ricky Campbell at Stanford got Victor Vigil, and Bingo at Colorado got Dennis Davis. 2 great guys who are going to make a big impact for that school. But back to Tulane. 2 guys, 3.48 composite score, 189 ESPN, 86 rivals, and 48.74 24/7. Then we get to the last 3 AAC teams on this list. First, we got East Carolina at 32 with 1 crew, 1.79 composite, 87 ESPN, 50.9 rivals, and 24.08 24/7. Then we have Houston at 35 with 1 recruit, 1.62 composite, 90 ESPN, 37.3 rivals, 23.66 24/7. And then at 36 we have Tulsa with their 1 commit, 1.49 composite, 90 ESPN, 29 rivals, 22.66 24/7. There are 39 teams that have gotten a recruitment. So East Carolina, Houston, and Tulsa are there at the bottom. But I feel like while the ranking isn't there for them right now, they were able to get guys that are going to make big impacts for their program. So I don't know. I would rank them a little bit higher, but then again, I'm not too well versed on other teams' recruiting classes. So don't take my word for that. That is all I got for this segment, though. And that would be the end of the episode. So 124. So it's getting kind of late. This will be posted, on August 28th. It's going to be the day after I started recording, but probably in the middle of the day. I'll probably get it to start rendering like while I sleep. But anyways, we'll get back to this next week where we will have the first episode coming after the mid-season mark. So, mid-season mark, maybe we see some teams, after the mid-season mark, they turn over a new leaf and they go after. They go out and they get some big wins. So who knows? We might see some teams turn it around. But we'll have to wait and see on that. So yeah, that's all I have for this week. I will see you next week. Um, but also, before I go, I just want to say, you know, huge shout out to Tuscan Soda and Ezico. They're doing their own shows. I Tuscan Soda really pushed me to do my own show, and Ezico came in and he started doing his own show. They're both great. I listen to them when I'm getting stuff prepared for these shows, and I'm getting stuff ready, along with like any random podcast. So it's always good to watch them. It's good content. So I enjoy seeing all the other content. And, I hope that I'm doing as good as a job as they are. But just wanted to say that quickly. I love seeing all the content. Um, but that's all I have. So I will see you guys next week on the AAC Wrap Up Show.